I'm getting the YouTube set up now. Well, if Ryan, I'm ready to go if you are. So, or if you all are.
We got everyone back.
Debbie, are you there?
Can you see me?
Yes. Ben, are you back?
Nope.
And Michelle, I do want to, same as North Farms, open up as a new hearing, right?
Yes.
All right, I make the motion to return to regular session.
Oh, sorry, Ryan. I don't know if Ben was ready. I don't know if he was.
I was sorry. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Thank you.
Are we recording?
Yes.
Okay, so we're good. All right. So I will make the motion to return to regular session.
Second?
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Tranto.
Yes.
All right, and we are going to recess from our trustee meeting and open the hearing for the continuation of the Route 23 overlay district. With that, I will turn it over to you, Ms. Bonnie.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. We do have a presentation this evening, and Holly Matty, our consultant on this project, will be doing the presentation, and Kelsey, myself, and Bob Lamb are here for any questions that you may have throughout it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, trustees, for your time. My name is Holly Matty, and I am with Crossroads Community Planning. I've been assisting the Delaware County Finance Authority and the Orange Township staff with the development of the Route 23 corridor overlay zoning district, which we'll be referring to tonight as the RCOD. I will provide a quick overview of the document, and then Kelsey with the Delaware County Economic Development Department will wrap up the presentation with a review of the tax analysis for this corridor. So going on to the next slide, this proposal includes an amendment to the township zoning resolution to create and include the RCOD overlay. This text amendment follows the typical zoning amendment process that is shown on your screen. Having received a positive recommendation from both the RPC and the Township Zoning Commission, we are currently at the Township Trustees public hearing stage of this process. The overlay text, if approved by the trustees, would go into effect 30 days after that approval date. The goal of the RCOD is to establish the standard for development that occurs within the 23 corridor. By adopting this text amendment up front, it will serve as a statement and set the expectations for developers regarding the types and quality of developments required to meet the desires of the community. In return for complying with these standards, developers are able to move directly to the development plan process, which on the next slide shows what that process is. As proposed in the overlay text, a development plan may be approved within a 60-day period, provided the developer complies with the adopted regulations or requests and receives an approval of one or more divergences. This 60-day process includes an informal zoning commission work session and a township trustee public hearing. There are approximately 1,680 acres of land within the RCOD, which is shown on the next slide. This area has been divided into 3 different sub areas, including mixed use, commercial office, and industrial areas. In a few moments, we'll be looking at maps to illustrate where these various sub-areas are located, as well as the design standards for each of them. But for right now, I'd like to point out that the commercial office sub-areas allow for commercial and office type uses only. No residential uses are permitted. The industrial sub-areas allow for advanced manufacturing, logistics, and research and development type uses. And the mixed use areas, as the name denotes, allows for a mixture of commercial, office, multifamily, and mixed use buildings. Mixed use buildings refer to as that I'm referring to are commercial office uses on the ground floor with residential uses on the upper floors. I also want to point out that residential density remained a concern as we reviewed this document with the RPC, the Township Zoning Commission, and both internal and external stakeholders. So as a result, a housing unit cap has been established for each of the areas described on the right-hand side of the screen that you're looking at right now. So now let's go ahead and move into the maps. And I'm going to briefly describe what you're looking at here. There are 3 different maps. The red color represents the commercial office areas. The purplish, bluish areas represent the mixed use areas. The yellowish areas are what we're referring to as multifamily areas, but based upon some internal and external discussions recently, we're asking to expand those mixed use areas as shown on the blue heavy border. So you'll see that border running from Shanahan to Lewis Center Road on the east side of 23. So that would, the MU1 would include that multifamily area and the commercial area that you see within that blue heavy border. On the west side of 23, it would still remain just the commercial office red area that you see there. Going on to the next slide, it'll hone in a little bit more on that Lewis Center to Orange Road. We're looking at red, which is the commercial office, hugging both sides of US 23, except as you get closer to Lewis Center Drive, that's where we had a mixed use area proposed, in addition to some multifamily areas. But we're asking again in that blue heavy border to make that all one mixed use area. This is also an area that the Zoning Commission had some concerns with, and their recommendations, they actually asked for a portion of that around the existing Lewis Center area to be excluded, but this map shows it being included as we originally proposed to the Zoning Commission. The purple area, which is behind the commercial area and runs along the rail line, is the industrial area that allows that advanced manufacturing, logistics, and research and development uses. Going on to the next slide, there are 3 different MUs. We have the MU3 that's on the west side of 23 around the Meyer area. Around the heavy border now encompasses some of that red area. So the mixed use area is being proposed to include a little bit of that red commercial office area. The MU4 area would be expanded to include the multifamily area and the northern part of that MU4, which is actually a recommendation coming out of the Zoning Commission as well. And then also that red area just below the multifamily designation. And again, you have industrial that has the Green Meadows Drive running through it and parallel to the railroad track. Then you have MU5, which is to the south of Powell Road, and behind it you have the industrial area as well. So that explains the areas, and then I wanted to briefly, through the next few slides, talk about the regulations. So the regulations have been written so that the uses directly on the major thoroughfare, such as 23, would have the buildings, the parking located to the side and to the rear of the principal buildings. Also includes side and rear setbacks, maximum height, and maximum ground coverage requirements. Going on to the next slide, the commercial office subareas also include a building to lot width ratio. This is to help control the building mass along the 23 corridor. So what you're looking at here, the left-hand side of your screen, are two different images that also represented on the overhead view on your right-hand side of the screen. So the top image is the left side of the aerial. The bottom image is the right side of the aerial. So what you'll see when you look at the images, you see two different streetscapes. You see one with the buildings up close. You see them with a good portion of the buildings fronting on 23. Well, not 23, the main road. The bottom picture shows a smaller building with a sea of asphalt around it. So that's being controlled by the building lot width ratios. So that's being proposed to help with that. Going on to the next slide, we're talking about the mixed use areas. We already discussed how it does call for a mixture of uses within the development as well as within the individual buildings. But there's also some key aspects that are built into the mixed use areas, such as requiring green space with a central green space to create a community-centered development within these mixed use areas. And if you go on to the next slide, we actually have a layout of what could potentially occur within one of these mixed use areas. It shows that central green space being the key of the development. It shows the buildings hugging both the 23 corridor as well as the central green space. So you get both that streetscape along 23, but also buildings that are able to look out over that area, the green area, created by walkability through bike paths that front on 23, as well as the adjacent collector roads, and can create connectivity between the buildings and the townhomes that are to the north. It also has connectivity requirements that require that connection from the side roads over to adjacent properties to help get the traffic directly off of 23 and creates more internal circulation within the development itself. And then the right-hand side of your slide shows how the different mixed-use buildings could be broken up based upon the floor area ratios within the document. So going on, I'm going to look at some just high-level requirements within the general development standards that are at the end of the document. They apply to all of the different sub areas. So architectural requirements, 360-degree architecture, no blank walls, minimum number of design elements per facade to help create that streetscape. Landscaping, street trees, screening between uses, screening along the right-of-way and between a perimeter of parking lots. Going on, parking. We created both minimum and maximum requirements. Minimum to make sure that we have enough spaces for those who want to use the property, but maximum so that we don't end up with that sea of asphalt that really hinders our streetscapes. Shared parking requirements so that when you have two different uses that have different peak hours, that they're able to share that parking and reduce that impervious surface through the development process. Parking bays so that there are a maximum amount of spaces before landscape islands are required to break up and create green space between those parking areas. Access and connectivity, we talked about that in the slide that you saw with the mixed use areas, can also be done in the commercial areas just by connecting our parking lots and creating that cross access between two different developments. Multi-use paths and sidewalks to be able to allow people to walk between these developments so they don't always have to get in their car and get back out on the main corridor, be able to walk between them. And going on to the next slide, we have lighting requirements, cutoff fixtures requiring the down lighting to make sure that we aren't having light spilling over on adjacent properties. Sign requirements for wall, ground, and projecting signs. Biggest thing I want to take on here is that we're trying to make it a better process for getting signs and making sure that they're scalable to the type of development that's being proposed. And then finally, just wanted to touch on a few key dates. We have a number of meetings that we have been through from the initiation of this overlay district to where we are tonight. All of those key dates are listed on your screen. Not going to go through all of them, but I do want to point out, in addition to all of this, we did have some public meetings as well. We had a public open house. We had a survey that went out online. I think we had over 300 responses. We were able to take all of that public input and be able to create regulations that are desired for the community. And then we also had a stakeholder meeting as well with some key business owners and different technical agencies from the county to help make sure that we're coordinating with their process as well. So tonight we're at the October 5th public hearing, and our goal tonight is to get a positive vote out of the trustees and move forward with this. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelsey to talk about the financial side of things.
Thank you, Holly. Yes, so I'm going to wrap up the presentation this evening, and we'll make it pretty brief for now. But if you have any questions, of course, we'll get into that as well. So just again, to keep it light, we hired the Montrose Group to do tax analysis for the corridor for how it is proposed as is right now. And based on their projections, we're looking at $560 million investment over the next 10 years. With a total tax revenue over a 30-year period being that $385 million. In addition to our potential public infrastructure revenue as another $160 million. The school's seeing about $125 million. And then to offset that, the cost to educate the students sitting at $67 million, leaving the school a net revenue of $23 million over the next 30 years. But before we move on to the next slide, I think that it's important to note that the cost to educate students was based on previous Olentangy studies of how much it costs to educate students and how many students are coming from multifamily developments or mixed use developments, any kind of apartment type structure. And what the Olentangy studies found were about 15% of multifamily units bring about 1.8 students per unit. And it costs about $11,000 to educate a student from kindergarten through 12th grade. So that's kind of how we're basing those numbers there. And then another consideration too is to consider for additional revenue could be the potential of a jet. We know that, just looking at the growth of the area and the success of the Evans Farms jet and how that structure is, our team is very confident that that Orange community could bring about could collect about 50% of that revenue or more. So again, just basing it off of that, of course, that's something that we can look into a bit more, but another thing to consider. And then comparatively, looking at the corridor, if it was based on a single family build out, there's quite a difference in terms of the projected investment. So obviously a lot more at $1.4 billion in investment if the corridor is built out for single family housing, and a total tax revenue of nearly $900 million. You'll notice that there is no revenue stream for potential public infrastructure, so be sure to keep that in mind. And although the school district would be raking in a lot more at $670 million, the cost to educate those students would cause a dramatic deficit of $1.4 billion over the next 30 years. So kind of to conclude, based on the analysis, our Delaware Economic Development team believes that approving the overlay will help the fiscal demands of the Orange community and the greater county community in terms of the growth that we're going to be seeing here and that we are seeing right now. So that's all for me, but I get to be the one to close out and ask everybody if anybody has any questions about anything that we talked about. So I'll open it up for Holly, Michelle, and Bob. We're all here to answer any questions that the trustees have.
This is Trustee Grumbles. I would like to go up to the maps, Michelle. So I want to thank Michelle. We met Friday, and the bold lines you see are largely the byproduct of one of a few discussions we had. And I know that it's a pain in the butt to get these types of requests and things later, and some of this stuff was pushed, timeline wise. But I do want to thank everyone. Usually when we talk, I'll get a call from Bob within 30 seconds. So I know you guys are tied together and you've collaborated and you've worked, hard on this product, and it's very clear and evident with this presentation. So thank you to the group for all you've done. The push for me on this and why I really wanted to request this, and Michelle, we spoke, and I think she genuinely agreed. And I know the zoning commission had some concerns, and it kind of all came together. And I'm bringing this up as a newer board member and kind of outside looking in. The perspective in part of campaigning was that we have this kaleidoscope and kind of hodgepodge of stuff in Orange. And I really felt that in areas where we have a stronger single family or residential, that transition of a multi or a mixed use versus straight commercial or straight multifamily would be much more favorable as a segue in. But it also kind of takes the handcuffs off of our development partners so they can say, look, we have a capacity from a multifamily standpoint. So with that, if we have a larger area of mixed use and we look at that collective footprint and that collective acreage, if there's lots that are available or that we've invested in, the goal would be that we have a more cohesive, bigger project instead of these small, little bitty hodgepodge projects. And so I hope that the professionals on the call, because I'm not a zoning professional or a developer, I hope that logic makes sense. And I hope, I wanted to bring this up because I hope that if there are people listening or potential investors that do listen to this in the future, or, that they hear that and that it resonates with them. This is a great opportunity for someone to come in that wants to do a larger scale partnership and project with the township. And the other component here that I think is critical to keep in mind, and why having these larger cohesive mixed use areas is critical. We have a lot of redevelopment opportunity here in order to kind of fix the past and grow into what we are today, but also the future. And I think that if we look at what some of these are already zoned, with the purpose of this overlay, expanding upon opportunities, well, if we have it zoned already for something, let's expand upon that in the event that an opportunity does surface a developer wants to take on. So I think this looks really, really nice. It looks great. I appreciate the pushback. I did want to point out in the document that the acreage for multifamily was 5. I think in one spot it still said 2. I see I have some notes here that I haven't reviewed, but that was a big change. And so I want residents to know that as a board and as a team, this document and this work was scrutinized. The details were scrutinized, and we did listen to our zoning commission. And with a 5-acre minimum, it does, protect against, some of the residents with larger acreage, potentially having things happen around them that would be, troublesome or whatnot. But I think it's in good faith that this really equips our township to do great things. And as a first, sign of partnership. The financial components, I'm not going to dive too far into, but I think that as presented, this does nothing but facilitate opportunity And that's the most important starting point to have with that. The numbers, I want to caution that when we look at financial incentives, some of the tools and the TIFs and the things that we could get into would potentially impact those numbers and move those numbers around and move money from one thing to another. So once we get into that, I'm hoping that the group will come back and help present to the township the continued efforts. But I think this is great. I want to thank you all for it. And this is something that we committed to doing as part of me coming into the township. And so I'm excited, obviously, to see the hard work of those on this call come to fruition. So thank you for all your efforts in the partnership here and with the county and the other professionals that have come into play here. And Michelle, great leadership here. And I think this is obviously something that a lot of townships and their zoning departments don't get a chance to take on. You've done a great job and it's a great growth opportunity. So I'm really pleased with your work here and proud to have you on our team and look forward to your continued growth through these types of projects. But wanted to take a minute to tell you how proud I am of the work you've done too. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with everybody. I think we've come a long way. I'm happy with the results that we have here tonight, and especially with the map changes proposed. Not only do I agree with you, Trustee Grumbles, on expanding the opportunities for the mixed use area, but I also believe this goes quite in hand with the Zoning Commission's recommendation too.
If I could just real quickly, I just wanted to explain the difference between the 5 and the 2 that Mr. Grumbles did. And thank you very much, Mr. Grumbles. I appreciate all the input that you've provided on this. And I do agree with the mixed use area being expanded as well. I think that's a great idea. Did want to touch on the 2 and 5 acre difference. So we changed the tract size to be 5 acres and then the lot size to be 2 acres. So that if somebody wanted to phase their development, they could do a smaller phase within that larger overall plan. Hopefully that meets the intent that you were looking for with that change. If it doesn't, then we can, look at revising that number tonight if that's so desired.
Okay, so sorry, the lot staying at 2 is that, so if a collective group of lots were to come together, but they collectively had 5 acres, then they would qualify. I'm fine with that. The goal for me was to say, look, we have a cul-de-sac of 2 acre properties and one property is acquired by a developer who then in turn wants to build some mixed use or something. And they're surrounded by single families who aren't ready to sell. Then we get into a position where people get uncomfortable, right? And we have those that are kind of legacy neighborhoods in our township that at some point in the future, I do see as we transact and sell that developers could potentially acquire those or maybe en masse. But in the interim, we want to make sure those folks are not put in a tough position like that. And I think that with changing that to 5 acres, it insulates that and prohibits it from happening. So I appreciate everybody's willingness to do that.
Yep, absolutely.
We also have our Delaware County Economic Development Director with us tonight, Bob Lamb. Bob's been a big part of this, and Bob, any comments you'd like to share?
Trustee Rivers, I would just like to say this has been a great experience working with your team. Michelle's been incredible. The work that Holly, Kelsey, and Michelle have put into this has been spectacular. They've been dedicated from day one to making sure that this serves the interests of the community. We appreciate all of the input that we've received from the elected officials throughout this process. We think this is a better product because of the engagement that we've had over the last 6-9 months, however long this project has been running. We really believe this will better position the community to meet the fiscal demands of the future while making sure that the schools and other key partners are protected as well. So I would just like to thank you and the other trustees for the engagement you provided on this endeavor and for being to work with us to better position the community.
Hey, Bob, thank you. Thank you for all your work on this, and really thank you for coming to the township with the opportunity to partner on this at the onset of my term. I can't thank you enough for this. You know, a big goal for us here is to be proactive in what we build and kind of what we become, and kind of get to a shift in defining our future versus reactionary, if you will. And I think this is a great start to where we kind of dictate what outcomes we want. And I'll tell you, the most exciting thing for me is imagining some of the redevelopment opportunities here. I think that with these big blocks that are zoned like this, you know, we could really see some, you know, exciting things. I know there's speculation about Giant Eagle and, you know, big areas where there's a lot of footprint when you look at this, and something that the right company and the right partner, which I think we have some of right now, you know, could really do some great things for Orange Township. So thank you for all your leadership and help, you know, behind the scenes. I hope everyone listening or who does listen to this can appreciate the calls and personalities and angles and effort that goes into this, not only from you, but to your point, to your whole team. So thank you guys for your patience and diligence and perseverance on this project.
Thank you. I think based especially on your comments regarding the redevelopment opportunities, I couldn't agree more. I think we face challenges we never expected to at the beginning of 2020 with commercial property, especially in the retail area. And I think this overlay will help many of those property owners be able to reposition successfully given their times. And there have been a lot of individuals who've waited on this, and we appreciate all of it. We think it's a better product because of it. So thank you to everybody who's taken their time to provide feedback to us.
And there's been too many hours to count. I know I'm ready for an overlay break. And I know as far as hours and what all Michelle's put into this, that Michelle's looking forward to getting this approved. But this is just a document. Obviously, going forward, we want to bring the right businesses here, the right development. So it's critical now that we get to the implementation part of this, that we have the right team in place. We never could have done this on our own without the partnership with the county economic development team here. I mean, we just don't have the manpower. So this was a great partnership, and for it to continue to go forward, you know, it's critical that partnership continues and that we get the results that we're looking for. And just, you know, big picture here, you know, this is a big step forward for, you know, our smart growth strategy. And that strategy is to generate more tax dollars. They're going to ease the burden on our homeowners, and they're going to help the school. So with this development, you know, we're looking to generate tax dollars that's not going to produce, you know, a large number of students, increased population within the school that was touched on tonight. So this brings to us the winning formula, we think, in going forward and seeing our township continue to be successful, you know, and prosperous. Anyone have anything else to add?
Trustee Rivers, just before, I would also like to thank the county commissioners and the DCFA board for allowing the economic development staff to engage in these endeavors and to promote the partnerships that we've created with Orange Township and other communities. I think these are the key things that set Delaware County and your community apart from many others by being able to forge these relationships and open up these opportunities. So thank you, and thank you to those who I just mentioned.
Michelle, do you have the resolution that you could
I do,
on
yes.
the screen? And Ms. Kraft, are we at 345?
We are.
Before we move forward with the resolution, I would like to indicate with the resolution, there is one modification that we did add. It was a correction that we noticed today, so we didn't have a chance to get it into the text. But on the last sentence of section 20.031, we wanted to make sure the word mixed use was added to that, so it encompasses all the uses for the overlay. But other than that, we are ready for the resolution, unless anyone else has any other questions or comments.
I'd like to thank our zoning commission who spent quite a bit of time on this and had good insight. Their opinions and thoughts are certainly always appreciated.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 20-345, adopting a recommendation with modifications of the zoning commission to the Board of Township Trustees regarding amendments to the Orange Township zoning resolution.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Tranto.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
So with that, we will close the hearing of the Route 23 overlay and return to regular session. And before we end tonight's meeting, I did get a notice. Ms. Kraft, we have a purchase order.
Yes, this was one that was part of the consent agenda, that was part of C that we pulled out with N1 Discovery, the Paul Peterson company for $32.50 for guardrail repair.
And the amount is $3,252.
You got it. And
Yep.
50 cents.
50 cents.
Sorry, I missed that in what I sent you.
So I will make the motion to approve resolution 20-346 to authorize the issuance of a purchase order to Paul Peterson Company.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Tranto.
Yes.
I guess I thought that was part of the consent agenda, so I apologize for.
No, that was, it probably should have been. This is the first time we've ever pulled anything out of the consent agenda. So we probably could have left that one in there as C, but that was probably my error.
No, okay. Well, like you said, I just wanted to make sure that I understood how it worked too. But I think it's either way it's covered, so we're safe, right?
Yes, we are.
Paul Peterson is getting paid, so that's the
He's
important part.
getting paid. Thank you.
A quick question on that, Paul Peterson. Is that an insurance claim? Bill, did that get, usually it's a car that crashes into it and their insurance ultimately pays us back. I just want to make sure that that's happening.
Well, this is actually the second crash at the same location. You approved a purchase order for Paul Peterson a month or so ago. You put the new N panel on the guardrail and someone's plowed into it again.
Oh.
So to answer your question, we did turn the first crash information into insurance. We have not heard back. We do have the police report for the latest crash, and we'll be turning that in as well. Hopefully we get reimbursed for that.
Thank you, Bill. And Mr. Cowan, if you would, with Mr. King may be able to help too with from a background standpoint with maybe pushing through at the county if there's a need to get a hold of someone there to get assistance with that too.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, I believe that takes care of everything on the agenda for this evening. With that, I will make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes.
Mr. Grumbles,
Yes.
Ms. Triento.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.